and welcome to the Big Orange podcast. My name is Jess. I'm the COO here at Big Orange. I'm here today with Sam, one of our creative designers, and the lovely Emmy joining him today. And we're here to talk about all things AI. This is something we've touched upon before in the podcast, but in a rapidly moving AI world, we wanted to pick up on a few of the big news stories surrounding AI this week. Hi, Sam.
Hey.
We're going to focus particularly on what's been going on with Adobe. So Sam, Adobe is something that is integral to your job, obviously something you use every single day. Can you explain a little bit about what Adobe is, how you use it, why it's used so much around the world for creative work?
So the Adobe suite, it pretty much covers anything creative that you might want to do. So from Adobe Audition, which is sound editing, all the way to video editing in After Effects or Photoshop, Illustrator, the image manipulation software that everyone knows about. They're used pretty much as the industry standard at the moment. And I think that is because it's so prevalent in the world, and even with university, college, anything like that, they teach you these programs from the get-go. So you're learning these programs from the start, and then you go into using them in the professional way as well.
So they've really saturated the market. They've kind of got the monopoly on how people do creative work globally with their products. Just a few stats for you here, Sam. Creative Cloud Suite has over 23 million subscribers globally. 90% of professional creatives use one or more products from the suite, which would very much agree with what you just said there. In the last year, over 400 billion PDFs were created. And interestingly, more than 1 billion files were read in liquid mode, which is the AI-powered mobile reading experience for PDFs, which leads us on nicely to our wider conversation about Adobe, which is the backlash to their terms and conditions. Sam, what's your knowledge about what Adobe are trying to do with AI at the moment?
So one of their new tools is Adobe Firefly, and that's their own AI generation tool that creates images, video as well, all sorts of anything AI generated. And I think that's what we've been discussing in the office lately. Yeah,
and do you know if that's kind of meant to enhance what they're doing already, or if that's meant to kind of be an alternative to what they're doing? How are they kind of portraying that to people who use their software?
It's a little bit of both. So there is the content which is more inspirational to help guide ideas of people that use Adobe, but then there is standard image generation that could replace illustrators, for example, or stock video generation, which could replace videographers. It depends how people are using it, I suppose.
And for the uninitiated, someone who doesn't use it, would that take the form of a written prompt that you then ask it to create a certain image or a certain video?
Yeah, so this one's a little bit different. So you can do a written prompt to create something that you'd like, but also you can use images to prompt it. So for example, you could put in, a picture of a tiger and then give it a photo, give it a description of a cat, and it would turn the image of a tiger into the picture of a cat or something like that.
Nice. And in your creative role, do you see that benefiting you at the moment? Do you think it's good? Is the output good output as far as the creative is concerned?
It's an interesting tool. It's not something I would use professionally right now. I don't think it's quite there, but it is interesting to use to maybe get ideas at the moment, but I wouldn't use the output as something professional just yet.
So that's really interesting, because in order for the AI to learn more and to become better and better and to be really credible out there in the world, whether that's on videos or on billboards, on TV ads, whatever it might be, it needs to learn from somewhere. And I think this is where this backlash has come from in recent weeks. So a little bit of background on that. What happened was users of the Adobe suite had to agree to the new terms and conditions. And part of these terms and conditions was a statement along the lines of the company can access users' content through both manual and automated methods, basically taking away the ownership of whatever was created from the person that created it within their programs. What's your view on all that, Sam?
Yes, I think people are rightly interested in who can access their files. So having Adobe having access to looking to what they're doing, and I think the potential to use that data to improve their AIs is a concern. If artists and illustrators, designers are making original content, having that used in an AI would be a conflict of interest to their work, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots around the ownership of what's created. I know a lot of the talk around it was to do with why should we be paying all this money to use a platform if we then don't own anything that we create on it, which is a bit different from people's concerns around social media platforms, for example, Instagram, where it's free to use. But Instagram, I know they've also faced backlash recently for using photos to kind of develop their AI, but as it's not paid for product, it's a slightly different argument that's going on. So I think people are also really concerned about the use of sensitive content. If the AI can use what's in a PDF and it's a non-disclosure agreement or a contract with a client, there's a lot around the ethics of that. And particularly when so many creatives are freelancers or work in very small teams and they're not part of a big business with a big legal team, where do they stand on that? You know, how does your individual creator deal with that?
I think that's interesting because especially in the creative field, there's lots of things that aren't always released to the public as well. So for example, like concept artwork for films or something like that could get released or leaked before they are officially released. So there's lots that could go wrong with people looking into other people's files, I think.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, you know, anyone who creates anything is an artist, and it's the heart and soul has gone into that work, and the ethical and kind of moral boundary line is quite difficult. So I can definitely see why people would be upset about this, but that's not to say that Adobe haven't tried to come back and clarify some of the things that they said. They've been very clear to say that it's the purpose of the changes is to improve their services and software, not to steal users' work. I've got their statement here that we should probably read out for fairness. Their response included this statement: our commitments to our customers have not changed. Adobe does not train Firefly Gen AI models on customer content. Adobe will never assume ownership of a customer's work. Adobe hosts content to enable customers to use our applications and services. Customers own their content, and Adobe does not assume any ownership of customer work. So they're really kind of trying to address this. And actually, since this happened a couple of weeks ago, I have heard rumours in recent days that they're trying to update it again to be really crystal clear that this isn't their intention. But there seems to still be an awful lot of scepticism around this. And despite all these reassurances, lots of people are kind of looking for other platforms. Obviously, Adobe is the front runner. In your view, is there anywhere else that people could go to kind of avoid this?
There are products out there that can do the job. There's community-made ones that are open for development for people to mod and change and input what they want into the programs, but they're never going to be able to compete with Adobe because they just do have that hold on the design world.
Yeah, they've really saturated the market, and it's the transferable skills across industries. And with, you know, unless there's a big movement whereby the whole industry or the whole creative industries moves away from it, it's very unlikely that they would have the impact if the individual moved away.
Yeah, that's it. Because people are just going to pass on those Photoshop files, those Illustrator files. That is the industry standard. They're going to be a bit confused if you pass on a totally different program file to them. They might have to convert, and then it might not be quite what they're looking for. It might change or alter in some way. And I suppose a good example of how popular Adobe is the word Photoshop. Instead of people saying photo edit or photo manipulation, people will just say, I'll Photoshop that in. So it's just become a verb in our everyday language.
Yeah, it's become the generic term that everybody uses. So obviously I completely understand the unease within the creative industries about how AI is kind of muscling in and taking on some of the creative jobs, or supposedly taking them on, whether the standard's there or not. But are there ways that you think AI can actually help creatives or help your job role?
Yeah, I think so. So there's always been, or for a little while anyway, there's always been a little bit of AI in Photoshop. So for example, there's a tool called generative fill, which was just filling in little gaps or little imperfections in photos, and it would average out and work out what should go in that spot. So an easy a way to get rid of blemishes in the photos. And it sort of evolved from that to become bigger and bigger to now the point where you could say, insert a vending machine in the background, or remove this person and make them smile, or something like that. So it's gone from a very simple tool to something more complex, and now it's got so complex that people have these concerns.
Yeah, so it has been a real kind of time saver in the past. The little nitty gritty jobs that are annoying to do, it can kind of help with that.
Exactly. So it used to be if you had to remove the background of a photo, for example, that would be depending on someone's hair, for example, it could take a very long time to edit around curly hair. But now there's just a button for it and it uses the AI to do it. So things like that are very useful and do save us a lot of time.
Yeah, so in your day-to-day job, you're really applying that. You have been for some time. So yeah, that's very interesting, actually. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, from more of an operational process point of view, AI can help massively with workflow. Things like briefing in projects, taking notes from meetings, writing minutes from meetings, writing action points, something that not everyone finds easy, not everyone wants to do. So if there's an AI that can help do that, then that's obviously really useful. We use project management system that has certain AI integrations that really help move things along. Obviously these things have developed to a point where we trust them to take accurate notes or trust them to summarize a document, which is, I guess, a leap for some people. But there's certainly, in little ways, they can make the jobs a lot easier. So integrating in workflows is a big one. Obviously, people use ChatGPT for certain things. As far as we're concerned as a business, we wouldn't rely on it for anything. It's certainly good for prompts for things or summarizing information or kind of coming up with the odd idea, but it's not something that you trust to do any writing. I know it's not quite the same as the image-led stuff. As far as I'm concerned, it's very easy to read at the moment whether something's written by AI or not.
Yeah, I think there's certain words that it uses a lot and you can spot it a mile off sometimes. But as well with me, or with the creative team, when we're creatively thinking, sometimes words are difficult to come by when we're describing our work or maybe thinking of inspiration. So it does help the people in their different ways of thinking as well. I suppose it goes the other way when people are good at words and they're not so good at images. It can help bring their descriptions to life.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really good example of how it can be useful for people whose brains work in different ways. If you've got more creative brain, like you say, you might not find it so easy to put words down on paper or be able to describe an idea to a client who, is seeing it for the first time, who doesn't quite see it in the terms that you see it. So certainly for things like that, I think AIs can be really useful. So digging a little bit deeper into why people are so outraged and upset. I mean, we've talked about how it's their work and their work being stolen, but there's a lot to do with the ethical lines that are crossed, where the very idea of some kind of AI model being able to access your computer or access your files somewhere is very scary to people, and rightly so. What do you think of the ethics and the morals and the lines that are crossed here?
Well, I think the people that are most concerned about AI are creatives, because that's what it's threatening to take the jobs away from. And unfortunately, they're the ones that are using the Adobe suite, so they're going to be the most concerned about this. I saw one interview with an artist, and she said, if you type her name into Google right now, the first thing that comes up in Google Images is AI images trained on her artwork instead of her artwork.
Oh my God.
And she said, I was searching myself and bastardizations of her artwork were there instead of her artwork first.
That's scary. And probably her life's work.
Yeah, and she could see her style and it mimicked it closely, but not exactly. And that was appearing before her own things. So she was actively losing work from this.
And then where does the chain stop? So if an AI will mimic that AI's work, does that first AI own the artwork, or does the original artist own the artwork? It's a very, very grey area.
I even saw one AI generation, and it generated in the style of someone's artwork, and it even put their watermark onto this AI generated artwork that they didn't make. But because the AI doesn't know any better, it thought that was part of the styling and put it onto the image itself.
I think that sentence is really interesting as well. The AI doesn't know any better. The AI doesn't have inbuilt controls. The AI, we kind of talk about it as if it's a person, but it's kind of what it actually is almost unimaginable to someone who's sat there creating a single piece of artwork. The AI doesn't see that. It just sees an idea and it'll come and take it. Yeah,
and that's one thing I don't think will ever be replaced, that hard work that goes behind a piece of design or a piece of artwork. And especially on like a painting or design or whatever, every stroke, every pixel has thought behind it. Whereas with AI, there isn't thought, it's just data.
There's varying degrees of opinion on how much AI can come and take all our jobs, particularly in a creative industry like we're in. I obviously completely see how AI is doing the work of graphic designers to a certain extent, or can take on certain elements. But I do think having the human element I'd like to think having the human element is something that will remain. An idea has to come from somewhere. I think, is there a limit to the human kind of capacity to accept something that's created by a non-human AI? I mean, who knows? We'll probably all be looking back in 20 years thinking how naive we were.
Well, I think some people can spot it easier than others. I think especially in your chosen fields.
Yeah.
So I can spot an AI generated image a mile away. I remember showing someone that popped up on Facebook all these what I thought was hilarious AI images, and my friend couldn't tell if they're AI or not. But
Yeah.
I could see it a mile away. And like you said, you could spot AI written work.
Yeah.
But I don't think I could spot that.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting. I know what you mean about there's lots on social media, lots of AI generated imagery that even to someone who can understand it and knows a lot about it can sometimes almost look right. And you're kind of looking, thinking there's something not quite right about this. So it's definitely not as sophisticated as it needs to be at the moment. But, you know, if you look at how quickly that type of image generation has come on, it's pretty rapid.
Yeah. But I think as well, if you saw a business with an obviously AI generated image in their ad or a billboard or something, let's say, would you trust it?
Yeah, it's credibility. Yeah, I think certainly, there's a lot of perception with credibility. Are they an ethical company? Are they treating their staff fairly? Are they just a kind of front for some kind of unreal business that's not a real business? It would make me think worse of a business if they just used AI.
I think it looks like the cheap option.
Yeah.
If you saw someone had something really well designed or a painting done or something like that, you can tell that they've sunk some money into this, so they care about the advertisement, they care about the audience, they care about their business. But an AI generated image would be a shortcut. Yeah,
and I think the world is rapidly moving anyway. Even if AI hadn't become a big part of what we do, technology has moved so rapidly. I do think there's a slight human backlash to it all. And I think there's a need for people wanting tactile things. For example, lots of young people are going back to buying vinyl records because they want to touch it, they want to hear it, they want to kind of smell the record sleeve, whatever it might be. Same with books, like lots of people are going back to buying proper books. I think the backlash to the recent Apple advert where it was everything condensed down into one very small phone or whatever it was, just goes to show how kind of people are a bit disgusted at that now and kind of maybe are moving away from that. But whether the AI lets us do that or not is another thing altogether. Yeah. Cool.
So one thing I've noticed on Instagram is that it gives you the option to say if the content that you're putting up is AI generated or not. And there are even some flags on there that will flag it up automatically as well. So there is on social media the ability to find out if the content is AI generated or not. And they're moderating that as well.
And is that for the users to flag themselves?
So it's users to flag themselves, but also I think there is an automated one as well.
Yeah.
Because I think I saw someone I follow, they got flagged for the use of AI, but they claimed it wasn't.
Oh, really?
So there's obviously something that's not quite working there, or maybe it's looking for something that's not there.
Yeah, I mean, if a big platform like Instagram is actively trying to show what is AI and what isn't, they're obviously noticing that this is an issue. I think there's going to be a big push-pull between the human element and the AI element. Like, no one can deny that AI is useful. You know, it's going to be useful for people's jobs and for people's everyday lives. Yeah. But definitely, if we're starting to see the basis of this little push-pull between it right now on social media platforms, it's very interesting.
And even in the real world, there's boundaries. I saw a story about Comic-Con recently, that they have a place there called the Artist Alley where creators can go and sell their artwork. And there was someone there selling AI generated artwork, and they're promptly told to leave. Because
really?
in the terms and conditions, it's saying if you're exhibitioning at this event in an Artist Alley, it has to be hand drawn or even digitally made artwork that is original.
Yeah.
So they're not allowing these AI artists into these artist areas.
That's so interesting. AI has obviously been created for years and used in different ways, but certainly how it's come on in the past 12 months for the end user, the everyday person to use AI, particularly in the creation of images, it's phenomenal how quickly it's grown.
And I think they need to put these boundaries because some people are being tricked by it. They could walk up to this stand or wherever and see these AI generated images and think that they're authentic without thinking. So I think they need to put these boundaries in place, otherwise people will get tricked by it and spend money on these items that in reality aren't authentic pieces of artwork.
Yeah, I agree. So obviously it's really good to discuss how AI can actually enhance a role. There are some ways in which it makes our lives easier, but definitely the challenges and limitations, I think, kind of outweigh the positive at the moment. There's a lot of grey areas. There's a lot of legislation that needs to be sorted out, whether or not that can actually keep pace with the world of AI as it is now. One thing, obviously, that we want is to ensure that creativity remains central to what we do, to particularly what you do in your role. Do you foresee the future of AI without creatives like yourself, or do you think there'll always be a need?
I think there'll always be a need, and I think it comes down to the fact that we'll use AI as a tool rather than a replacement. It can help us do the monotonous side of our job, like we said, like photo editing or sort of batch editing images, something like that. But it's never going to replace the ideas aspect of a designer.
Yeah.
So I think there'll always be room for it, and it will get better and better. And I think we're just going to have to work around it and know that there is that competition as well. And I suppose it drives us to be better than the AI as well. We need to come up with better and more original ideas.
Yeah, the ideas, they always come from a human. The AI can't do it without the humans, so. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You can find us on our social channels, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and now TikTok. Or you can listen wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you, Sam, and thank you, Emmy.